All right, I got chat room up.
Mm-hmm. So you should know in a second.
I can go to videos. So
I can too. We can make sure. Ah. Misdirected Mark.
no, that's FM Gamers collections.
I see us on my phone. We're live.
Okay, I'll take it that you got us then.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I'm in chat room. I hear a woot.
You hear a woot. We made it.
It's finally up. Hello, welcome.
Oh my gosh, you guys.
Woo!
The problem was everybody could hear me. No one could hear Phil.
Which some would consider to be an advantage.
I don't. You're mean to yourself. Hooray! But apparently Mac OS 10 has like weird things about input audio from desktop and blah 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 blah. So we just had some audio driver excitement.
Good times. Good
I
times.
know. Now I don't even have the notes up or anything. But like,
there's hardly any notes to begin with, so that's going to
good.
be exciting.
That'll be fun.
Okay. All right, so I have a chat room. Hello,
Sweet.
chat room.
Should I also have I should put a chat room? No? Yes? I have a chat room on my phone. Oh, are we having a
No, Rob's making a comment. I'm going to be extra Sith.
extra Sith because of your Star Wars
I
shirt?
propose the formation of the first galactic empire.
Might as well be the First Order, but you know.
Okay.
Right. Okay, we're on 193. Right?
Hello.
Um.
Yes, episode 193.
Cool.
Super anemic notes.
Cool.
I didn't have any time to write any at the airport.
Cool. It's fine.
Cool. All right. So first, we should probably say hi to everyone. Hello, everyone who is either watching this streaming later, or all of you folks in the chat room. It is Tuesday, and it is I, Phil, but this is not the Misdirected Mark stream. This is the Pandas Talk Game stream because Bob is down with the sickness and wasn't able to run the show tonight. And you and I did not get to record last night because I just flew in from Texas last night and was pretty exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
So now, just to keep things fresh and interesting, you and I are going to stream our recording of talking games so that we can fulfill our need to put out an episode for next week.
Right, which is important. And I am going to mention a thing about our notes because I'm looking at them now. Who do you want to talk first?
Oh, I think this will be you.
Okay.
You can go first when we do. So for people who are watching, like we're actually going to just do
exactly
like our pre-show, and then we're gonna like actually start the show. So one of the things we do is actually kind of take a look at the notes, and our notes are pretty anemic tonight. So we're going to be doing a lot of ad-libbing tonight, which is fine. I'm just going to put a few notes in real quick. But anyway, I don't want to waste too much time with this because we can actually just get in and kind of get going with this. So, but let me I'll put in the intro really quick.
It's fine. You put in the intro. This is the part where we sit down together. So then we like real quick fill out all the stuff that we didn't fill out.
And normally this is done, but like I said, I was traveling
You were traveling all over the place. What are we talking about tonight?
Talking about lines and veils.
Oh, cool. Do you need me to find some patrons real quick?
No, we'll just wish all patrons love tonight.
Okay.
That's fine. Okay. All right. I got enough for us to get started on. Because we're just going to do I've got a couple of topics here we're talking about on our evolving thoughts on lines and veils. And then we've got people in the chat room. So, we got people in the chat room, so that'll also work as well.
Did I turn into a transformer? They're saying I turned into a transformer. I don't know what happened.
You might have just had one of those like little net slowdowns for a second.
I blame Andy for streaming it. It's okay. We'll just do our best. We're still gonna record locally, so if you miss anything. No, you don't have to! Sorry, I'm joking!
She could just come in and sit in. And
She's downstairs.
She could just sit in the room and watch it live. Oh, but she doesn't have a headpiece.
Oh, do I still sound like that? I mean, the good news is we're still gonna record locally.
Yeah, I hear you fine. I'm not hearing
This
any.
This is gotta be some sort of OBS thing. But Rob says this is troubling in capital letters. That's apparently an echoey robot.
They're saying. Oh, I just heard that. Talk again.
Okay.
No, you sound fine.
Andy, it's not you, it's me. You can do whatever. Boy, oh boy. If I have to mess around with the audio inputs again, then
this thing's dead in the water.
Well, it doesn't have to be dead in the water, but is it better now? Okay.
All right. Well, maybe it's just like
maybe it was Andy. Maybe it was because she got off and now people are saying it's okay. I don't
back
know.
to good now. All righty.
I don't know. I'm sorry. Okay. Cool. I have an Audacity window.
All right. So I have an Audacity window too. So if you want to get started by counting us in, we'll get the Audacity going.
Do you want to do that? Do you want to go through the notes first? If we're going to go through the notes, we should do that before we record. If we're just going to wing it, then we should start recording.
All right. All right. So fine. Right. So we don't have a lot in here, but right. Hey Phil, hey Senda, right. Talk about lines and veils. I'll do, do you want to do the intro, like tonight's topic?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So you do the tonight's topic. And then I'll just kind of step us through then. I'll be kind of like moderator. I'll step us through those bullet points.
Okay.
And we'll just have like a little bit of a discussion on each one of those things.
Okay.
All right?
Yep.
I think the first two are probably actually one.
Yeah, that's probably.
It looks like that, right?
True. Yeah. Yep. And then just discussion. I don't think we're gonna do that. Yeah.
That's what you're looking for.
Yes.
Although we'll do a quick definition on lines and veils.
Sure. We should do that.
Okay. How's that?
It's back now, apparently. I think that it is actually Andy.
Did Andy reconnect?
Yeah, connected because I told her that I was fine. Now it's happening again. Sorry. I like Andy's beef is killing the podcast. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. I don't know if it's you or not. She got off again, guys.
Well, let's hear if everybody can hear you.
So, chat room. Type things is better now. Oh, Bob, you're not allowed to take nights off. This is what happens.
This is us trying to keep everything afloat.
We're trying, man. I don't know what's happening. You can hear it catch up. Weird.
It's slowly getting better. So it's got to be a bandwidth thing.
It's got to be a bandwidth thing, and it's got to be a thing where like it's not aligning. Okay, let me look at my. Okay. Well, I'm sorry,
People
guys.
are saying it's fixed.
I need to be this close to the microphone because I'm going to be recording the audio locally for the podcast, so it is not dependent on the stream sound. I have to be close enough for that to be cool. It fixed. It's got to be a bandwidth thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, no. Yeah, no. I'm not gonna futz with the sound. Okay, we're cool.
All right, you ready to do this?
Sure.
Okay.
You're ready.
Want to count us in?
Yeah. Oh, let me put my cursor in the right spot. Do you have your cursor in the right spot? Not the hang up spot. The
yeah. No, I'm good. Not the one that not the one that closes the hangouts. Yeah.
Not that one. Mm-hmm. Although not
ATR.
being
ATR USB microphone check.
Yep.
All right, go ahead.
ATR,
I'm good.
ATR. Good. Okay. Ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1. Clicky.
Clicky.
Yay.
Click, 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 click. I have waveforms.
Ooh, this is interesting. I think I might be picking up some of your waveforms just a teeny bit, but I think I can fix that in post.
Noise gate that thing out.
Yeah, I'm gonna. I do it on yours a bunch, so I'm not worried if it happens a little bit on mine.
Okay. I look good. I got waveforms. That's pretty happy looking.
You always look good.
Aw.
Smooth. I also have waveforms, which is
You
also
have cool background. I have institutional wall looking background.
Yeah. I mean, if I move
basement.
out of the way a little bit, you can even almost see my cool Star Wars picture. But
yeah,
instead, look, any.
I mean, if you want to play that game, I'll go over to my rack and go get the ennies off the wall.
Right. I only bothered to get one though. Like, I really just needed one.
I can see two of them over beyond the computer. I've got the 2011 silver Ennie and the 2013 gold. Ooh, schmancy. Anyway,
it just happens to be hanging directly behind my head. So sometimes I'm like, oh, look, an Ennie.
So
it makes me really happy, okay? Because like I never won awards or medals or anything like ever as a kid or anything, and I'm like,
me neither. But I didn't do anything as a kid, so I was like, I thought I was like too cool to actually participate in stuff. So,
I mean,
that's a thing.
I tried to do things that I could do by myself.
Like the Bob's like, I wonder what happened in 2013 when they finally won the gold. Like we got an editor.
We got an editor by the name of Bob.
Yes. All right. So pre-show time. I was in Dallas all this past weekend.
Yeah.
I was there on a sad family note. Right. I had my uncle passed away, and the memorial was on Saturday, but I did get to go to Dallas and reconnect with a whole bunch of family, which was super cool. And I went to a Buc-ee's. We should talk about Buc-ee's for a few minutes.
I saw the picture and I'm mildly horrified by it. Like,
Buc-ee's is about the most Texas thing. I mean, if somebody asked, like, could you encapsulate Texas into like one space, I would say Buc-ee's. Buc-ee's is a gas station convenience store that is like the size of a small grocery store. It had 80 gas pumps, which also made me wonder how much gas you have to store underneath one in order to have 80 gas pumps.
I mean,
right?
I guess
like literally a lake of gas.
If there is a zombie apocalypse and you need gas, apparently the place to be is Texas.
Yeah. So let me just clarify, because Rob was asking if I said 80. Yes, it was 2 pumps, 40 lanes long. So 80 total gas pumps. The inside had everything from homemade fudge to roasted nuts to a kitchen to a beef jerky emporium, a barbecue area where like they made like brisket and sandwiches and stuff, sodas, knickknacks, trinkets, Buc-ee's branded items like the little stuffed animal beaver and things like that. And I cannot emphasize this. The cleanest bathrooms I have ever seen in my life. I have never seen a gas station bathroom so large, so bright, so clean. You could have had a picnic on the floor of this bathroom, and you would not have been in anyone's way, for starters. And two, it was totally spotless. Like it really is. It really is just a sight to behold. Anyone who's been through Texas or from Texas, as they're listening to this, is just nodding their head, going, of course. But I've never seen anything like it, and it is the most Texas thing I've ever seen. It is large to the size of ridiculousness, and no trucks allowed. So it's only for cars.
It's not even a truck stop.
It's not even a truck stop. It is literally just a gas station.
I just have been working on the assumption that it had to also function as a truck stop because nothing else could justify this kind of extreme. Like, it makes me think of a truck stop that we always stopped at on when I was a kid driving back from my grandmother's house in Indiana. That was like, it had like a diner in it, and it was a truck stop, and we always got the fresh made fudge from the counter, and I made my parents buy me troll dolls.
Yeah.
Right, but like it was, I keep picturing that, but like 3 times bigger, and like trying to imagine 3 times bigger that without the trucks. I'm flabbergasted.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. And I will say this. The brisket sandwich was also delicious because I was not going to leave Buc-ee's without something to eat. So I got a brisket sandwich to eat. There are no tables. You just have to like eat standing up outside.
Which is typical gas station, right? But like you normally expect the gas station to be like building sized.
Correct. So so the brisket was really good. I also got some beef jerky and some things called Beaver Nuggets, which I think are like corn pop things, like they're
I guess you're gonna find
corn
out
kind of things. I don't know. I'll tell you next week because I'm gonna put them out for my DCC game on Thursday.
See, good.
So.
Maintain the yes, Beaver Nuggets. Maintain the tradition of having weird food for your game nights, because like the other night I brought the weirdest free juice samples.
Beaver Nuggets is the Ditch Lily's nemesis band.
Oh man, Beaver Nuggets. They were so bad too. Like they thought they were good. I don't know. Like I knew some people who liked the Beaver Nuggets, who preferred the Beaver Nuggets.
They're actually banned in Oklahoma. Like they're literally not allowed to. They're not allowed to play in the state of Oklahoma after what happened at the Oklahoma State Fair.
Yeah.
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 I mean,
not to mention which they're crap.
I mean, yes, they're totally crap. They were one of those country crossover bands.
Right. They wanted to be the Dixie Chicks when they grew up.
They did.
But they didn't.
But you really can't like there's a limit of how many electric fiddles you can have in a band, and they clearly exceeded the number of electric fiddles that you can have. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that number is actually 1. So like 4 was overkill, you know?
Yeah, 4 was completely overkill. You actually cannot make a band of just electric fiddles.
Right. Well, they had the one electric
and you know,
banjo.
Right. It was a mess. It was a mess. It was a hot mess. But
it was a mess.
It was during that time with the crossover, you know, that country rock crossover thing. It's mostly Shania Twain's fault. Like that's
Yeah, you know.
As is most things.
I mean, the rivalry definitely started when they did that really bad they did that really horrible collaboration and ended up getting played a lot. That was so bad.
Yeah, it was pretty ugly.
It was like the Ditch Lilies did not go with that 4 electric fiddle sound. Like that's just not.
No, and even worse, like when they tried to remake The Devil Went Down to Georgia, like a song that requires no remaking whatsoever.
Yeah.
But it was too much fiddle. Like
too much fiddle? Bit more fiddle.
Bit more fiddle.
Good.
Too much fiddle. By the way, have you eaten cheese yet?
I have eaten small quantities of cheese. I haven't eaten anything where cheese was the primary like thing.
Okay. You're like easing your way back in.
Well, I ended up having a frozen pizza the other night because literally there wasn't any other food, and I was like, and then I ate it, and I was like, I didn't want this. It's got too much cheese. So yeah, but I had tacos. I put a little bit of shredded cheese on my tacos. Like a little bit.
I did too.
A normal amount.
So the memorial service, because my uncle was not a religious man by any stretch of the imagination, and he did not want any kind of ceremony like that. So we had a luncheon at his favorite Mexican restaurant. So we like rented out like one of the side rooms, but so they had like a full buffet, like taco buffet and stuff. And so I did have some cheese and a little bit of queso.
Yeah, but see, that's different. That's different than like just a serious, like a fistful of cheese.
Deep fried.
Like, what?
Eating a block of cheese is unhealthy. Hold my beer. Let me deep fry it first.
I mean...
And in Wisconsin, that's actually true.
Wow.
Literally, hold my beer.
Yes, I'm going to fry this.
Yes.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's just... I just ate too much cheese. I ate so much cheese, I made myself sick.
Oh, I know.
It just took me a while to reapproach cheese. Lactose and I are not necessarily friends.
Not for a while.
Not for a while. I'm back on like almond milk only, baby.
There you go.
You know.
Oh, I forgot. I made a coffee. Hang on one second.
Oh, can you reach it?
Yeah,
That's
my robo
okay.
arm just extends far enough to...
I am drinking the boo. The boo.
My verdict is out on kombucha. I'm not sure.
Kombucha. Sometime you're going to be out here again, and I'm going to take you to the kombucha place. It's very, very good. This kombucha is tasty, but Happy Leaf, where they make it here, is fantabulous.
All right, so maybe that's what we have to do. Maybe I have to go try like kombucha, like a couple kombuchas to find out like what mine is.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only kombucha that you've tried really was that really strange one at the hotel in Toronto last year.
I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't really try it. You were like, here, try it, but you were still pretty sick. So I just like kind of put it to my lips and I was like, no, I don't know.
All this time I have lived under the illusion.
It was like warm. It was like none of it seemed like a good idea.
It wasn't ideal.
You were like really out of it. So like I didn't want like I was just like, hang on. Yeah. I see what you mean.
You lied to me.
No.
Okay, so you've never actually had kombucha ever.
But I think that's to my advantage because I think if I had actually drank the one in Toronto, I would be less favorable of trying kombucha.
It was pretty terrible. I was drinking it because I was recently off antibiotics and was trying to recultivate the Buggies in my Tumtums.
Yes, very excellent, very scientific definition. The Buggies in my Tumtum.
I'm sorry. I don't know. What do you call
highly scientific terms? The bacteria flora of your digestive tract.
The flora of my tum-tums. Like my gut life.
Baby steps there.
I needed to get my gut life back. My colonies, my little aliens.
Gut Life was an actual failed Disney movie. A Gut Life, yeah, it was a failed movie about the paramecium living in a stomach. Totally, it was a disaster. It did not do well domestically or internationally.
And then they decided to just retell the story, but with ants instead.
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
Pixar
in fact, actually, when
rights.
they redid it with bugs, it like took right off. But... The Buggies in My Tum Tum is the worst Beaver Nuggets album of all time. All right.
Okay. Well, anyway.
Oh boy, somebody's gonna have to edit all this
audio.
Like
14 minutes of
nonsense.
Which means
it's you.
I have anime tears. Tears of anime streaming from my eyeballs.
All right, you wanna actually do the show part?
Yeah, we could do the show part.
Okay. Are you ready to
I'm gonna
begin
burp.
the pre-show process?
Hang on. I'm drinking all this kombucha, and it's bubbly.
They're all waiting for you.
I know. It doesn't help. I can't decide if I'm going to burp or not, so we're just gonna get started, and then we'll see what happens.
It'll be easier if we get started, then you definitely will burp. So that'll definitely happen.
This is way worse with people watching. Okay. Meow. Meow.
I made the face.
Yeah, you did. But when you say that you made the face, it defeats the purpose of meowing because we're not supposed to say anything after you meow.
We got to do it again.
Yeah, we gotta do it again.
Okay.
You better meow first.
Ready?
Uh-huh. I thought you were gonna meow first. You're gonna meow, weren't you? Oh, this is gonna suck so much to edit. Okay.
Sorry. All right, here we go.
Meow. Meow. Hey, Phil.
Hey, Senda.
You want to talk about lines and veils?
I do, but only up to a certain point.
Do,
Boom,
do.
boom. There's people here.
Oh my God! You have to do the Muppet head. Do the Muppet head. Everybody got to share in these moments with me. Good. Yes. Sorry. We're here.
And welcome to another episode of Panda's Talking Games. I'm one of your hosts recording live tonight, Phil.
And I am your other host who had to figure out the audio, Senda.
Mm-hmm. So, for our normal Panda listeners who are listening to us in podcast land, we are actually streaming in place of the Misdirected Mark tonight because Bob was down with the sickness and we couldn't stream. And we had so we hijacked this streaming to a live audience while we are recording. And I bring that up only because it is possible that during our talk tonight, the chat room may be speaking to us and we may make reference to people in the chat room. So if that seems a little odd, it is. If it seems a little off, it is. We're doing things a little differently tonight. In fact, even our topic is a little different tonight. So
Yeah.
just stick with us. We're going to fumble our way through this for the remainder of the length of the show, but that's cool. We got this, right?
We totally do. And for the sake of you and me and the people watching at home, I just figured out why I was picking up your audio on my track. And I fixed it.
Oh, good.
And why I was getting a weird echo because your audio was coming out both my headphones and the speakers in the display.
Glad you fixed that.
Uh-huh.
Hey, Senda, what is our topic for tonight?
So our topic for tonight is our evolving thoughts on lines and veils. So we've been writing this game called Turning Point. Can I just talk about Turning Point for a second?
Yeah,
We've been writing this game called Turning Point, and to be entirely honest, our experiences with it have been pretty emotional generally, and we find that it's a game that can generate that kind of experience really well. But that also means that as the people writing the game, we have a lot of responsibility to give it the tools to play as safely as it can, right? Like we can't force anyone. We can't sit at their table and be like, you must do this, right? But we can do.
In fact, we wrote that in the
Yeah,
safety chapter.
I'm kind of quoting
We literally
that.
can't make you be safe.
Can't make you be
but
safe.
We really want
but
you to.
Please, will you?
Yeah.
So it's been an interesting journey because Turning Point happens to track the time period, both writing it and then also just playing and experiencing games during which our thoughts on safety in general have been evolving. And we've been thinking about it a lot and how to make it something that you can engage at the table in a real way to be able to have really intense experiences, right?
Yeah. And so what had happened was that we've been talking about so we've been talking a lot about actually implementing the game at the table because
Right.
Before we had the quick start out in the summer, we were running this game a lot, like just us. I mean, we were like the only two people running it for a while.
Yes.
And so when we were writing the quick start, and as we were writing the manuscript, we were really focused on how do you actually play the game, not just what are the rules for Turning Point, but like how do you actually do it? Like how do you make it happen at the table? And both of us have run many sessions of it for many different people. And for the most part, like we combined kind of all of our experiences to kind of really hone down what to do, including the safety part, right? So we baked the safety of the game into the game itself, right? So each dilemma has a safety section that you do a safety check, right? Which includes lines and veils. And what we noticed is that there were a couple different ways people do lines and veils.
Right.
And as we talked about them, we were kind of like, I don't know. Like
what is our recommendation? They both sound good and we understand why they exist, but like, what is our feel about lines and veils, right?
Right. And I say this because I know what I say at the table.
Yes. Right. Me too.
Right. And I use lines and veils in other games as well. So like my home groups, I often do lines and veils with as well when I'm starting up a new game. And so I also know what I say.
Right.
A lot of times when I'm doing lines and veils. And so what I thought we'd do first is talk a little bit about kind of like a quick review. I'll do a definition of what lines and veils are and the two traditional ways that people implement them.
Yeah.
And then I thought what we could do is then we have a few points that you and I had discussed that were just kind of ideas that we had about lines and veils and that we would just kind of talk them out loud. And so I guess to qualify this, this is us thinking out loud and brainstorming with each other.
Yeah.
This is not our, hard and fast, one true way of doing lines and veils. Like, I don't think that there is a one true way for pretty much anything. So we're just going to talk about lines and veils as we're thinking about it. The chat rooms actually here, they may have their own thoughts about it and challenge what we're saying or agree with what we're saying, etc. And when we get to the end of the episode, we'll either be where we think we are, or maybe we'll have in discussion changed our points.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. It could kind of go any direction. And one of the key things just for us to say, I think even before we start talking about it, is this episode is like us discussing our evolving thoughts on lines and veils. And even once we're done recording it, our thoughts may continue to evolve, right? And like there's a lot of safety discussion happening in the tabletop game community in general right now. And just to add right on to what Phil was saying, 100% to speak with absolute clarity, I don't think that either of us think that like we are the be all end all, like even approaching on safety, right? But it's a cool conversation to have, and it's a cool thing to think about, and being able to talk about it, kind of knowing that like, things are going to continue to progress and people's thoughts about this stuff are going to continue to change, and everybody's going to continue to evolve as we find more and better ways to do this stuff. That's cool. So this is a snapshot in time of where we are tonight. Ooh.
Which is a long way of saying do not jump on our ass on Twitter and yell at us about this, because we're merely thinking out loud here.
Right. And if this episode, you're listening to it like 5 years from now and you're like, how could they even say that? Like, yeah, this is a product of its time, because this is where we are right now in time space.
Exactly. Cool. All right. So with all that, with all our disclaimers set aside,
yes.
My final disclaimer is, while we do not consider ourselves experts in safety, I do not think we consider ourselves rookies at safety either. We've actually spent a lot of time talking, thinking, and implementing safety tools in a variety of ways.
Yep.
And we feel pretty comfortable with them. Okay. With that all set aside, I will quickly just do a review of lines and veils, and we'll talk about the two ways to do them. I think I'll just ask you to do one and I'll do the other when we get to it. Okay.
Okay.
All right, cool. All right, so lines and veils is a safety tool is obviously composed of two parts. The line is things that we will not cross during the course of the game. So if something is set up as a line, we expect it to never happen in the game. So for instance, I often have a line in my game of violence against children.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not a thing. It's not a thing I need in any of my games, right? So we just don't. I just most times line it right out of my games, and it just does not come up.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Conversely, we then have veils. Now, veils are things that we are comfortable having in the game, but we don't want them to be in any detail. So the concept of it we are comfortable with, but an in-depth exploration of it we are less comfortable with. Yes.
My favorite way to describe it is that veils are things that can happen off screen, but not on screen, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So for instance, one of my typical veils is sex.
Yeah.
I'm very comfortable having sex as a component in my game.
Yeah.
But I don't need anyone graphically describing what's happening between characters. Like, I'm very cool with she pulls her close, she kisses her, we go off camera.
Fade to black.
There we go. And it's perfect. Okay. Yeah. So all right. So now what that tool does, right? That tool helps us establish boundaries in our game, right? It's a boundary setting tool, right? It says these topics are not allowed in. These topics are allowed in up to a point. And by default, if it is not listed, then it's considered fair game. And I'm going to put an asterisk on that.
Right.
Right.
Because that's part of what we're talking about tonight. Yeah.
That's part of what we're talking about. Right. But if I've got stuff written down on a card, do not put these things in. And I've got stuff written down for veils, put these things in, but don't do them on screen. And I have nothing else written. My only thing I can do is in the moment, assume that those are my boundaries.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So there are two ways that people implement these. And I have done both. Mm-hmm. I think you have too.
I have.
Right? Okay. So I'll do the first one, which is how I normally do it, which is I just simply ask people in a group, does anyone have any lines? And then, we write them down. And does anyone have anything they would like veiled? And then we write them down. Right. We'll contrast the two because you should talk about what the other one is. And we'll talk about the differences between them.
So the other one is to basically hand out pieces of paper or something to write on, and have everyone write down their lines and their veils. And then as the GM, collect those back and then read them back to the group so that they aren't necessarily associated with a specific person.
Right.
And that's the key difference.
That's the key difference, right? So the key difference is that no one has to own what they put in the line or what they put in the veil.
Yep.
So there's a couple so that's an advantage, right? So it takes the people part, like who's got what things out. But the one disadvantage it has, like I've noticed, is that everybody writes their stuff down on the card. Not everybody's handwriting is equal, right? So like sometimes
that wasn't even what I was thinking about. Carry on.
Right, but sometimes you like look and you're like what word is that? And then like I don't want to have to out anyone, right? And like be like, did somebody put fire or is that frogs? Like because then the person actually has to be like, somebody at the table has to be like, it's frogs, and then like you've ruined the whole point of putting out the cards,
right? Because that person had to come
that
forward.
Person just
and now
had
the
to
rest
out
of
themselves.
them didn't. Yeah, that was actually the thing that I have experienced with that way is when people write something down and you aren't sure exactly what it encompasses, right? Like, because sometimes it's not like spiders or like sexual violence, right? Like that's the one that I usually put down as a line. Sometimes it's like things with parents, like
and then we're like,
okay, so like are parents entirely lined out of the game? Is it fights with parents? Is it like So
Exactly.
sometimes it's like, oh, okay, I need a little bit more specificity because I don't know exactly where this boundary is. But like, and
Yep.
then so that ends up leading to the same problem, because if you ask for or get more specificity, then you have again done the thing where, they had to say it in front of everybody. Which the purpose of doing it on paper like that is to
So
avoid
people
having
don't
to do
have
that.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah, people don't have to
It's
justify or have their things tagged to them.
right. It's a solution for the peer pressure issue at the table, right? Like,
Absolutely.
is the idea.
I mean, or some, and also it gives like some anonymity, right? Because
Yeah.
like maybe I don't want people like to ask me later, like, what's your deal with spiders, Phil?
Right. Or frogs.
Right.
Or fire.
Neither. It's
Fire.
giraffes. I
Fire
hate
frogs.
giraffes. Um,
I don't know why. I don't know what you have
So-
against giraffes.
they're pretty snotty. Anyway, we'll get into that in the outtakes. Like,
Okay.
and get into giraffes later. I used to have a much bigger chip on my shoulder, and then I saw them fight with swinging those heads, and I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll just cut these guys some space. That swinging head thing looks pretty dangerous. Anyway,
I don't know what's happening here. Okay, where were we?
you opened the can on giraffes.
You
I'm just saying.
opened the can on
Okay.
giraffes.
I dropped an innocuous statement in. You decided to go chasing after it and then you found out what happens.
Apparently giraffes are a line for games for you. I was
Good point. All right.
surprised.
All right. So those are the two traditional ways. And so here's where we started to think about lines and veils a little differently, right? One of the things that has come up, and I've seen it discussed on Twitter, and you and I have discussed it separately, like, hanging out and stuff like that, is the idea that having to list all of your lines, especially if some of them are traumatic, and not have them come up in the game, like, not that they don't come up in the game because it's a boundary, but literally there's pretty much no way they're going to come up in the game.
Yes.
Right. But having to list it anyway is its own, like, can be its own form of trauma, right? Like, hey, I need you to write down all the things you've been traumatized by, but we're basically playing Toon, the RPG.
Yeah. Because sexual violence is probably not something that's going to come up in that game.
Correct. So there becomes an idea, and this is, I think, our first topic point, that lines and veils could be contextual to the content of the game.
Right. And I think that it's contingent on, as a table, having a good understanding of what content you expect from the game.
Yes.
Which, if we talk about Turning Point again, that's why we basically have content warnings on all of them. Like, here are the kinds of things that we can imagine might come up in this dilemma, right?
And dilemmas are very narrow.
Yeah.
Right. So dilemmas are very narrow. It's very clear. Like, hey, if we're playing New Drug, we're talking about chronic illnesses and medicine and families and things like that.
Right. So if that's a problem, then we can, A, we could just not play that one, or B, you can line out those specific things because you know that they might come up, right? Going in, like, this could come up if we let it. And so I'm just going to say right now, I don't want it to have this, right?
Yeah.
I don't want this to be one of the possibilities, whatever this is.
And so the idea for this is that if you have something that's very traumatic and you need it lined, but that the game isn't, the intention for that game isn't to go into that space.
Yeah.
Do you, and again, this is a personal thing based on, the person who's doing it, but do you need to list it as a line?
Yeah.
Now, I will say personally, I think there are some cases where if something is traumatic enough and you are comfortable enough saying it, that sure, you can just put it in every game you play. Like,
right.
I'm very comfortable no matter what game we're playing. I just, and sometimes I do it just as an example setting as well, that I always put no violence towards children.
Yeah.
Now, I don't have any history of violence towards children in my background at all, but it's just a thing I'm like super uncomfortable with because I'm a parent, right?
Yes.
But like that for me. That's an always like I always put that one in for a line. But for instance, I do actually have a problem with PvP and betrayal,
Yeah.
as you well know.
Yes.
Um, so I actually do have a problem with that. But I have a problem with that in games where that's not expected to happen.
Right. I mean, again, that gets back to having that conversation as a table so that you like know what to kind of expect from the game, or even just having an understanding of what the game is. And sometimes that means you have to have a conversation at the table. Sometimes, like Passion de la Passiones, it means we've been talking about this game for years. Like, I was not under any impression that you might not know what kind of thing you were getting into, right?
No. And based on the content of the game, I
Yeah.
was like, oh no,
Oh no.
I'm fine with betrayal
Yeah.
in this game.
This is, we're
right?
all going to betray each other.
Right. But if we were, for instance, playing Headspace,
That.
right, and somebody like decided to, do a betrayal, like I would actually have a problem with that. And we're going to
Yes.
get to in-game problems in a second. But so there's an argument for, and I think this is part of where our thought was, is that like as you are setting up lines and veils, that you're not personally required to list all your traumas, things you're uncomfortable with, etc., onto the card. Like whether it's anonymous or whether it's a group activity, you don't have to put them on if contextually you think they won't come up in the game. Asterisks, because that is contingent on the fact that there is a consent revoking tool included in your safety kit,
Yes.
i.e. X card.
Right. Or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. So that
X card, support flower, okay check-in,
something.
Script change.
Yes.
Right. All of them have a consent revoking aspect. Okay. So assuming that there's a consent revoking aspect, because lines and veils, I don't actually think is safe enough.
Not by itself.
Right. Nor do I think X card is safe enough.
Not by itself.
Correct. So if those two are paired up together, X card and lines and veils, then a person has the person has a chance to decide, and should have the chance to decide, I will tell you about this line because based on the description of this game, I think there's a good chance this is going to come up in the game. And I'll put that as my line. And then conversely, I have this other thing. I'm not going to put it down on the card right now because I don't really like talking about it with people. But if it starts to come up in the game, I can X.
Right. Or recently I've been even just, saying straight up like, hey, if you start to feel like we're headed in the direction of anything that you didn't bring up for lines and veils, like that's fine. We don't have to hit the point of consent revoking to add something to our lines and veils list, right? Like you can be like, oh man, now there's a frog in this story. And I specifically have a thing about frogs going, down people's shirts. This is a terrible example, but sure. But like, okay, I didn't expect there to be a frog in this game at all. So we didn't put down anything about frogs. But now that there is a frog in play, here are the things that I have concerns with about frogs that we should just get down on paper, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that you hit on something that is actually part of our first point, which is the concept of the living document. Like, I think that there's a lot of times where people set up lines and veils, and it's like, okay, cool, we have our lines and veils.
Now we're done forever. They're cut into the tablets, and they shall stand here, this momentous lines and veils, and ne'er shall they be changed.
Right, which in a one shot
maybe
is entirely possible, but in a campaign, like that's pretty specific to try to say like we've nailed up all of our lines and veils in session 0
for the next 6 months.
The next 6 months, year, whatever.
Yeah.
So I do actually like the idea that lines and veils is a living document, and that it can grow during the course of play.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna take a quick look at the chat room because there are a couple of comments.
Yeah, there's
here.
a couple of cool things. I put it so far away from me that I couldn't read it without bringing it closer.
Yeah, so Ange says, I think that, I think I have trouble with lines and veils. Sometimes I generally avoid games in genres or descriptions that I already know I don't want to deal with, which is perfect, right?
Yeah.
That's actually what content warning is for.
Yeah.
Is if you read the description of a game and you're like, not for me, perfect, right? That saves you a whole bunch of headache.
Right. I mean, it's really interesting because I definitely avoid games like that too. And I actually find that I use lines and veils to get really specific about boundaries much more with my home group doing one shots and stuff, because we start getting into like, cool, we're going to explore these like wild edges of emotional stuff. Like, suddenly it's really important to me that, parental death is a line. Like, that's not a thing that's going to happen, whether it's happening to my character, someone else's character, whether it's like my character's children. Like, that's not a thing that I can handle in a game. Or that I necessarily want to. Like, maybe there will be a game someday where I approach it with that, concept and that specific thing to have that experience. But like, that's a bunch of therapy at the table that I don't need my friends to do for me.
Absolutely.
That's not cool. It's not cool for people to not know going in that that's a thing, when it's a possibility that it might come up. And I've played a couple of games where I did have to specifically say that because it might have come up, right? Like, I played a game with Wen in which our characters were husband and wife, and he had been taken over by the darkness of the universe. And it was slowly eating him from the inside out, and he was not going to be himself at some point. And so my superhero magical girl had to, and I can't even say it, but but one of the conversations we had before we started that game is, will there be children? And I was like, no, because I can't handle it if the children lose their father. Like, I can't do that part.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So like, that was a situation in which that line specifically had to come up contextually because we knew the end point of that game before we ever started. Anyway, that was a long rant to tag onto what the end of Ange said.
Well, and I'm just looking at Ange's other part, right? Which is another issue that Ange has, is that people always feel like they have to say something when it comes up. So you end up with a list of stuff that may or may not actually be important to avoid, which I think is what we were trying to get to, right?
Right.
I had a very specific example, which is what got me talking to you about this, where I did the anonymous lines and veils.
Right.
And got back a whole ton of
like
lines.
A blurb.
Yeah. And like looked at them and was like, no judgment on who put down what for lines, but was like, most of these are not coming up in this in this game.
Yeah.
Because that's not what anything of the scope of this game is about.
Yeah.
And I was like, cool, these are all our lines. And I read through them, but I pretty much knew like these aren't going to come up.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I just wanted to see, Eric said, one of my absolute lines has to come up at the beginning rather than being X-carded, which is please no character accents to represent nationalities or ethnicities. Oh, that's really good, Eric. Face
the mic, Phil. You can do it.
I'm reading the thing.
I know.
People not hear me?
I can, but you're definitely doing a little bit of the Doppler. Like, all
right. Well, I don't have enough I don't have enough screens here.
So okay.
If I turn to read,
okay.
I can't do that.
Okay, then I can also read. So carry on.
All right. So yes. So Eric's point about no accents, that has actually been in my home group a table rule forever because no one I know does accents well. So I don't let anyone do accents because one, they're insensitive. Two, they're totally fourth wall breaking when they're terrible. Like I had a friend of mine years and years ago in the 90s who made a Russian spy for our Connex game. And he arrived at the session and started his Russian accent. And in 10 minutes, I was like, okay, stop.
You can't.
Like, we all just know your character has a Russian accent.
Right.
We're all good.
We got
it. Yeah, like nobody can, like, it was just a really bad accent, which again, turns out to be insensitive. But two, it was just impossible to listen to.
Yeah.
So, and I think that, so I do actually think, right, to be clear, I think that there are some things that are perfectly fine. I'm not saying that you sit down and never write down a line reveal and only use the X card to create your boundaries.
Yeah, no.
Right.
No,
That's definitely not what we're saying.
There are definitely some things, especially we're just saying those initial lines and veils may have to do. You should have the option to narrow them down a little bit more contextually based on what the game is about. But something like people doing accents, that really could come up like in any game.
Every game,
it
right?
Totally could.
The Scottish dwarven accent.
It applies everywhere, right? Like, and that's fine. But but clowns might not. Right? Like if you have a fear of clowns and you want to put that down as a line, like contextually for the game, that may or may not be an issue.
Right. In my Toon game, it is
something you should put down. Yeah.
Right. In my DCC game, it is
not
less likely.
Super likely.
But not off the table for DCC.
Sure.
Right?
But if you're playing, say, Turning Point, then I'm hard pressed. Like it would have to take a pretty hard turn into a circus or something to make that happen, right? And that's where Lines and Veils as a living document would come up, because if we started off and you didn't say clowns,
correct,
because you're going to play something about your dream job, which has nothing to do with circuses, but then suddenly we end up with a scene that is taking place at a circus. When that scene is set up, then you can be like, hey, actually, I have another line that I would like to add. Let's just make sure clowns stay out of this. Okay, cool.
Which brings us to our second topic, right?
Yes.
Which is adding lines during the game without consent revoking tools.
Yes.
So you just, So you just nailed that to a T, right? Where all of a sudden the game takes a turn and suddenly a line that you did not list, or maybe it's a line you didn't even
you might not have known you had it.
Yeah, you may you may not
fine.
be walking around with a full list of all the lines that you don't want to talk about, but like all of a sudden somebody's like, cool, I'm gonna set this scene up. You know what, I'm gonna set it up at a circus, and then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, like now this thing I am uncomfortable about has just surfaced. So you brought it up great, right? Like you can totally, without having to hit an X card, simply say, hey, turns out clowns is kind of a line for me. And amend the lines document. And by amend, I mean actually take the card.
Yep. Write it down.
Word clowns on it.
Mm-hmm.
And now the game includes clowns. And then the person who's setting up that scene would be like, cool, not clowns.
But now we can have, trapeze artists. Like,
yeah,
we can still have this scene and it will be fine without involving clowns. But since we started to get close to a line there, now I know where a new boundary is and I can stay within that boundary.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. So that is absolutely a thing, right? That's absolutely a thing that can happen and should happen, right? You can always amend lines and veils again, because we are now talking about this as a living document.
Yeah.
And you don't need to X card.
Right.
To get there. You can get there ahead of the X card.
In fact, I think it's kind of preferable, because then hopefully we've avoided the part where you had to discover the hard way, the awful way, that there's a thing that you do not want to have in the game by having it appear in the game.
Or you might be able to have saved yourself from editing a scene.
Yes.
Right. So like if we're just setting up the scene and I say circus and you say, oop, no clowns.
No clowns. Yep.
And I say, no problem. I'll do it with, as the trapeze artists are going back and forth.
Yeah.
Then we're good. Yeah. Right. And we've amended. Right. I'm looking at our time, being mindful of our time.
I just looked at it too. Oh gosh.
Right. I'm being mindful of our time. I'm going to add our last point in, which is growing your lines and veils document when you have actually used a consent revoking tool.
Yes. So that is, if I can say it, that's when someone says, I'm going to set this in a circus, and you say, no, I can't do circuses.
Right. Or if we want to be funny about it, we're sitting down to play a game and somebody says malls and Robin says no.
Right.
No malls.
No malls. Yeah. Those are the boundaries you discover by running into them. Right.
And so, and I guess my point is with consent revoking is that, one, consent revoking tool is a great real-time tool for editing content, right? Content comes up and immediately you're like, nope, X card, right? And it takes it out. But there's a secondary step that should occur that we don't talk about, because the X card doesn't talk about lines and veils, and lines and veils doesn't talk about X cards, which is if you have X carded something in the game, you probably should amend your lines and veils to place that content into the correct bin. Is it a line?
Or
Did
is it
it
a
need to
veil?
be veiled?
Yep.
What, right? So the consent revoking tool is a great real-time activity to tell us to remove something from the game. But when that happens, we should update our boundaries.
Yeah.
And the problem is, while many people have done a very good job of talking about individual tools, a place where, and I think we did an okay job of this in writing the Turning Point manuscript, but what we really need to now start talking about is how do you integrate tools to create a culture of safety,
Yeah.
and not just have safety tools in your game. Like, and that is a much bigger topic than we can cover.
Certainly not after 50 minutes of recording.
No, and it might be something that we'll do in a future. It might be something we'll do in a future episode. The idea of a culture of safety, the idea of how to look at integrating safety tools to create a single experience. But before we head out, I just wanted to note one place where lines and veils are being done really well, and that is the D&D AP that Asians represents. They have a lines and veils, and they actually review it each session.
Yeah,
which is actually a thing I don't even like.
Yeah.
It's a thing I don't do with my group, which I should, and I might not need to review it each session because I kind of know my players. Like, I have the same players for years now. I kind of know their lines and veils, but it is actually a thing that I'm failing on, right? Like, I'm not doing it. But I wanted to just call out that D&D AP because that, you know, if you're listening to it or want to go listen to it, that's a great way to see lines and veils as a living document. All right,
Yeah,
cool.
good.
Are you cool?
Yeah, I'm cool.
Okay, so then, hey, before we head out to the closing of the show, why don't you tell us about another show on the Misdirected Mark Network?
Yeah, on Bonus Experience, Ray and Monica are two old friends exploring gameplay and design through the lens of diversity, while also sharing some of the dumbest humor gaming has to offer. Margaret.
Right. Margaret.
Come edit my show!
Say, Senda, where can people reach us on the internet?
Well, you can find us on Twitter at Pandas Talk Games. You can find us on the Misdirected Mark forums, or you can drop us an email, panda@misdirectedmark.com. And Phil, once they find us in one of those places, or they remember to write down our email address, what can they do with that information?
Please send us your topics. Unlike this episode where we had our own original thought for a show, we mostly just do topics when you tell us to do them. We're like a trained seal. Like, we bark, you toss us a topic, we balance it on our nose,
and then we eat it.
And then we get rewarded with some amount of fish.
Yeah.
So please send us your topics. We really do actually love to do the shows that about the things that you find important. And the only way we know what you're thinking about is if you share it with us. So share it with us. We'll make a show out of it. I promise. We're pretty good at it.
I mean, we made a show out of this one.
Yeah, but this one was our topic.
I know. We could talk about it for a long time.
I don't push our topics.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
If you like what we do here elsewhere on the Misdirected Mark Network, please consider supporting our Patreon campaign. Go to patreon.com/MMP. Patrons of the show get all sorts of goodies. They have bonus outtakes from the show, the after show from the Misdirected Mark, access to our amazing Slack channel full of some of the best humans you will find. And I'm not even talking about the host. I'm talking about the real humans, not the AI hosts,
right? You know,
that are on the shows.
Stop giving away our secrets, Phil.
but seriously, some of the best humans I personally know and love. You can come play Minecraft with us. You can do all sorts of things. Occasionally, we like to shower gifts upon our patrons, and we've been a little negligent in that, only because we're kind of in the new year and we haven't really fired something up. But we do actually have something. I just have to get Tim Jones moving on getting the graphics finished for it, and then we're going to shower a little game upon our patrons because we love them. So we also like to shout out to our patrons, but for speed tonight, because we have gone so long, we are going to we are going to do a blanket shout out to all of our patrons and just thank them in general for supporting the show. Your support goes a long way. It makes all of this possible. Mics, hosting, bandwidth, all of that stuff. We really couldn't do it without your support.
Seriously, thank you.
I talked about before that we balance the topic ball on our nose and perform.
Do I need to do the seal impression again?
the way that you can throw us fish, besides patroning our campaigns, there's another fish that we also really like that makes us super happy. And it goes part of our 2020 marketing strategy, which basically consists of this. If you listen to the show, you will love us and you will listen to other shows. But we need help getting people to listen to the show. And there is one way that bubbles us up to the top. What is that way?
I'm still not really sure that I have approved of this marketing strategy, but now you have to do your seal impression because I did mine. There we go.
I can also do my Wookiee.
Similar.
Yeah, very similar.
All right. You could leave us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or the podcatcher of your choice, and every new review we get really does actually help new people find the show, which is fantastic. And it makes us as happy as if we're getting fish treats because, artistic validation. And if you are leaving it somewhere that is not the U.S. Apple Podcast Store, because there are many, 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 many places, and to see the not U.S. store, we have to do some special things, then you should let us know, because then we will go read it, and then we will be very happy, like we got our fish.
Very happy. Say, Senda. Show me how you're going to update your lines and veils in the middle of your next one shot.
Oh yeah. Show me what you got. Show me what you got. Show me what you got. Show me what you got.